Yeah, welcome to this panel where we will talk about a topic that is maybe different from others. There was a lot about ETH staking, restaking, liquid staking here. We're going to focus on what's coming beyond that. Token staking, you know, Ethereum does a bunch of things with tokens, and every project here deals one way or another with token and staking. My name is Sebastian, I'm founder of HOPR. I'm working on privacy, specifically transport privacy, so that's why I don't get to talk on the panel, I'm just a moderator, because I don't deal with on-chain stuff. Now, to kick it off, I would like to hear from our panelists, maybe in a very brief statement, what do you do, and what is staking about, or token staking specifically, in your project?
Hey everyone, my name is Michael O'Rourke. I'm one of the co-founders of Pocket Network and also the CEO of Grove Infrastructure. And Pocket Network is a Tendermint chain that incentivizes people to run full nodes for other blockchains. This is basically done through a decentralized RPC protocol. So you can think of us as quite literally a decentralized RPC. So we have thousands of nodes around the world, and they connect through our gateway in a permissionless manner.
Hey everyone, great to be here. This is Cole from Volmex. At Volmex, we built the BVIV index and the EVIV index, which are the Bitcoin Volmex Implied Volatility Index and the Ethereum Volmex Implied Volatility Index. These are a 30-day rolling implied volatility index, like the VIX index, but for crypto assets. We also build a number of derivatives initiatives, largely perpetual future-based, around the BVIV and the EVIV index to make it tradable for hedging, speculation, a variety of things. I was also the second employee at Staked US, which was an early staking company which was acquired by Kraken. Very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Simon. I do developer relations for EdgeNode. That's one of the core developer teams that works on the Graph protocol. And yeah, when it comes to staking with the Graph, it's actually interesting. There are kind of like 3 different ways of staking, so to say. So first of all, the indexers, they stake GRT in order to participate in a network, and that stake can get slashed. And so that's kind of a little bit the classical worker stake that I think we see probably with Pocket also, or HOPR. It's a little bit, it's the thing. And then there are the delegators, which are delegating to these indexers. That one cannot get slashed, but it helps to secure the network. And then the third kind of little bit staking is the curators, which identify the subgraphs, which are the data sets that run, kind of make the graph useful, and to identify which subgraphs are useful. So it's kind of these 3 things. But depends on how you define staking. I would say staking is always capital at risk, so then it's only the indexers. The others only have risk of not getting rewards, not getting slashed.
Hello everyone, my name is Kirill. I am the backend team lead in 1inch. In 1inch we are building an aggregation of DEXs, market makers, limit orders, and recently we released our Fusion mod. It's intent-based technology that allows to perform an actions for resolvers, which should execute these orders. And the staking in 1inch should control the resolvers, the delegators, and the rewards that going between each party. And our system is modular, so Fusion is the model, and more coming soon.
Yeah, so after knowing what you guys are up to, I would say being here at Staking Summit, we see an impressive representation of what ETH staking is. We see, you know, the results of, frankly, hundreds of millions of dollar VC money pouring into ETH staking infrastructure. Token staking, by comparison, doesn't seem to be quite there yet. So how does token staking ecosystem maturity compared to ETH staking? And maybe we kick this off with Cole, who has seen kind of both sides of this world.
Yeah, it's a great question. So largely today, ETH, as you said, is the bulk of the staking. You know, the $100 billion that's staked today that Felix mentioned. You know, ETH is a $200 billion asset, obviously represents a large portion of that. I think, you know, for now we'll see, you know, a lot of layer ones like ETH and, you know, Solana, and this sort of things. But as there's more and more, protocols that are sort of consumer crypto protocols or DeFi derivatives protocols which go mainstream, and there's new tokens which come to market, I think these tokens can employ different staking models, and so we'll see sort of non-layer ones implement different staking mechanisms, whether it's consensus-based or some work token or some various game theoretic functionality in the protocol. So I think that we'll see sort of a lot of applications that have tokens, introduce some staking mechanisms, and various things like that. And so expanding from just the layer one subset. Great question.
Now, as a follow-up to whoever wants to take this, in ETH staking we see liquid staking, we see restaking. Are we going to see that for ERC20 tokens? Is that something that's coming up? Does this maybe not make sense? Anybody has any thoughts on that?
So I basically think that like Ethereum, this is the ecosystem for different projects. But each project, it's an own ecosystem. You need to have some regulations inside your ecosystem, some rules that should be followed by participants. And without the token, without something like a share, it's hard to manage the rights, what the person can do, or what the weight of his vote. And in most systems, the token is really necessary. For example, it's hard to make a fusion ecosystem without a token, because we need to have a whitelist of resolvers who should operate in the system, and we can do this whitelist without some material type like unicorn power. This is the power of the resolver, that they commit to the network, and they will be resolving orders, the users' orders. And whitelist allows to sort users by sort resolvers by unicorn power, and make first resolvers better than ours, like in terms of the ability of resolving. And after that, resolvers should distribute the tokens, and each user should has the delegation, the proportion, the share inside the whole pie to receive these rewards from the resolver.
Yeah, I feel like I view tokens, whether it's layer one or an ERC20 or something like that, as primarily an incentive mechanism to have a specific outcome. And I think really one of the most important things is really defining what that outcome is. And as you design your tokens and whatever it might be, really making sure that the model is sustainable. I view it in very much kind of like game design, right? If you played like RuneScape or World of Warcraft, you always had the source, whether it's killing monsters, bosses, and that sort of thing. And you also had the sinks, so you would spend that gold or whatever it might be in the game itself, and it just disappear. So I very much think of it in like a holistic way in terms of game design and what the outcome you want in terms of the coordination that you wanna see.
So speaking of design, like one other design aspect that I think Simon brought up is slashing. Like there might be a bunch of other people in the audience here which are, contemplating designing token systems or coin systems, bringing in slashing. What are considerations of bringing in slashing to a design? Like, what are the opportunities there?
With slashing on the graph network, it's like the indexers can misbehave theoretically, right? I think it's in most of these networks where we try to incentivize people to put in some computing power, and then we want to see that they actually behave correctly. And on the graph network, it's the same, so that indexers can misbehave. So think about, we have a subgraph that tracks a certain price, and the indexers start to, for whatever reason, respond with the wrong price to the queries, right? Then they could then try to take that advantage and, I don't know, short that other token that they gave the wrong price for, and in order to do some manipulation, which would be very, very bad. And So what we need is kind of like a system to say, if they try to do this, then we can, then they lose, right? And that's where slashing comes into play in the graph network. It's like for every action that indexers do, and then they can be, and we check that they are malicious. So for example, with every query, they send also like a query attestation, which is a signature proof that they say like, okay, I vouch with all my stake that this information is right? And then later on, like if they can prove wrong, their stake can get slashed, and that secures the network.
Yeah, I would also think about it in terms of the slashing of the importance of that atomic transaction itself. You know, RPC, for example, is a very, in most cases, a very low value transaction, right? Like, you know, you're doing hundreds of millions of requests, and most of them are just, you know, ETH get block height requests, right? But every once in a while, you'll be getting, you know, someone doing a transaction on MetaMask that is an extremely high value transaction. So you want to make sure that, you know, the slashing mechanisms, whether it's at the app level or at the consensus level, really match the value of the transactions or the health of the network itself.
Now, when we design such systems, it's important to learn, right? And I would say, honestly, we're all here to learn. Now, we can learn by saying that we all achieved something wonderful to be here, but that's not how we actually learn. So I would love to hear from everyone here, what are some fuck-up stories? What are some things where, you know, you think you could have done a better job?
Oh man, you want to be here for 3 hours or?
Kick it off.
I mean, to talk about staking, we, when we launched Pocket, we wanted everyone to run their own node. So we ripped out the delegation module in the ABCI app, actually. And as we went on along in time, we found out that most of y'all who are running staking companies don't want to, one, run their own, hold other people's assets, and two, our own interface that would plug into you guys was vastly different than what kind of the standard delegation is for the Cosmos SDK. So we ended up having to hack together various different protocol upgrades to actually be able to allow people to delegate and so on and so forth. We might have been a little too kind of optimistic in terms of what we wanted to do and people to run nodes, but at this point, I think it's actually quite important. You know, I think Cosmos has basically created a delegation standard that everyone has adopted, and I think that's very valuable to be able to plug into.
Yeah, well said, Michael. So our perp testnet we're still on public testnet right now. So we actually haven't rolled out any sort of staking live to date, but so not speaking from Volmex's point of view, but I've seen a couple, you know, things in the past where protocols, for example, haven't rolled out delegation on day one, or just had only a CLI wallet, which obviously like retail can't stake from, and so things like this, I think, can botch a staking go live for a protocol, and so I think just making it really intuitive and easy to understand is, you know, obviously very important. You know, and yeah, I think that's, you know, having a CLI wallet would sort of hinder that UX, as well as you know, delegation is good because then folks don't need to run their own node. I think Ethereum is a good example of that. You know, there's a whole conversation of solo stakers and running your own node, or you know, DApp nodes and things like that. But you know, maybe Ethereum should have a delegation. And so yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion about how staking mechanisms can be improved and all the lessons learned from, call it 2018 with the first, you know, 2019 with Cosmos being the first proof of stake launch, to 2023 with things like Aptos Sui, or you know, now like ERC20 staking or app chain staking. So very good question.
Fuck ups, huh? It's a big word for, I don't want to kind of throw the protocol researchers there, but like in the graph, there is one particular thing that it's kind of publicly known, that on Ethereum mainnet, there's this function I talked before about. It was curation, and it's still there. So the idea with curation is that people that know about Web3 can curate on subgraphs in order to index or to signal to indexers which subgraphs they should index. Because the problem that you have as an indexer is like when you start to index, let's say, Uniswap subgraph, then it takes maybe 2 months. And when I invested computing power into a subgraph, and then in the end nobody queries it, then it's kind of a little bit a waste. That's where the curator comes in. So with curation, it was also this notion of we need to incentivize people to act quickly. So as soon as a subgraph was published on the network, the curators that were early, they were early on a bonding curve. So they received more curation or signal tokens back than the ones that came late. To incentivize fast behavior, basically makes sense. But what it was leading to was that people came up with bots that were just curating on everything very early on, and it was in the end kind of ending up a little bit in a casino. And that basically stopped then curation because people don't want to curate anymore because they were afraid to get wrecked. But then with now the move to layer 2, to Arbitrum, that the protocol is now on Arbitrum, that curve is flattened, so like one curation GRT is always one curation share, so we were able to fix that.
Thank you for sharing that story from the dark forest.
So we think that the architecture of staking should be modular, like in the permissionless way, that everyone can connect their own model to the staking and implement some logic inside. It can be farming, whitelist, or some kind of delegation, and all of this incorporates inside the 1inch ecosystem. And it's cool because you can connect your ERC20 pod and connect one more inside this pod and have a really big infrastructure inside the small infrastructure.
Now, I see that Ethereum is trying to be a incredibly neutral base layer, and it's something that I find incredibly motivating to work on from all sides. Decentralization, privacy, from all angles. And my critical question to every one of you who's working on some, more or less token incentivized system there is, isn't a token incentivized system at the fringes of this core Ethereum actually undermining the credible neutrality of Ethereum and making it harder to taking, these features and morph it into a protocol? Because in the end, if you have a token there, you have a marketing team and whatnot, you're undermining your core business model. So aren't tokens counterproductive in infrastructure to providing credibly neutral infrastructure that I think Ethereum should be?
No, I don't think so. I think tokens, whether it's layer 1 or an ERC20, are fundamentally coordination mechanisms. The same way I am incentivized to be in a company and work for the value of my stock, or the same way that I'm motivated to work in a nonprofit, right, for whatever reason. These different organizations or in a government, tokens do the same thing, and it's effectively a Schelling point for people to coordinate and have a specific outcome. Do I think these things are designed perfectly? Absolutely not. But we do see some of the trade-offs, for example, on Ethereum, where it's great to see all the different L2s that are launching and this sort of thing. So I think in a capitalist world that we're in, or roughly capitalist world that we're in today, having these tokens to incentivize people to have specific outcomes are incredibly important, particularly because these are actually kind of supranational or kind of cross borders, which is, I think, one of the most incredible things about the space that we work in. So,
well, let me push back there. So a token that is used as a coordination mechanism, that sounds good, but that sounds to me like a valueless governance token. If you want to do more than that, people are thinking about value accrual. And the flip side to value accrual is value extraction. So, and that to me sounds destructive towards this core infrastructure that Ethereum is.
Value extractive in what capacity?
I mean, we have some value extraction for sure in order to run the core infrastructure, but the more additional infrastructure we bring there by RPC nodes, by graph nodes, by 1-inch infrastructure, and whatever we do, there's more and different value extraction. That doesn't seem to be aligned with this core neutral infrastructure that I see Ethereum as.
Well, I think that the way that these crypto networks end up bootstrapping is by over subsidizing the supply side in most cases. But I think inevitably we're going to have these markets, these supply side and demand side markets, effectively find some equilibrium over time. So there's absolutely value extraction. In fact, I think there should be some level of value extraction because if you're going to incentivize a supply side network or a demand side of your network, you want them to actually make money or whatever that might be, or maybe it's reputation, in a governance case, for example. But over time, those markets will find some equilibrium where, it might be printing money, minting some tokens for some time, but over time those margins will compress and it gets more competition and so on and so forth. And if that network doesn't have an actual sustainable model, well, then everyone's just going to end up exiting and leaving at the end of the day anyway. But I do think there is some level of value extraction that is important because that does bring in a critical mass of people to actually participate and contribute to these protocols and so on and so forth.
Now, thinking about a specific example, there's one example. Who here has ever developed, any application that works with a smart contract, like front end, back end, whatever? Any developers in the room? Yeah, bunch of hands open. Who here has faced the problem of, how do you actually parse past event data on Ethereum? Yeah, a few people. Yeah, Simon has. Okay, good, Simon. So this obviously left Ethereum didn't handle that well, right? And that left, I would say, $1 billion opportunity on the table for the graph, right? Now, isn't the graph thereby actually, wouldn't it be better to integrate the graph into the core Ethereum protocol instead of having it as a separate system on the side of it?
I mean, to talk to the Ethereum core developers about this. But to be honest, the graph, in a way, also goes in that direction. What is it? This EIP 4444 with the data that's not necessarily incentivized to be stored anymore on Ethereum by itself. Kind of the idea is that it's offloaded to some other entities. It's kind of in the roadmap on Ethereum to incentivize these other players to jump into that gap. And some technologies that are developed with the inside of the graph ecosystem, namely Firehose, that is a possible solution there and is now being actively discussed. How that then can be, part of that future Ethereum's setup.
That's cool. Contributing to the core, even if you're not an integral part of the core. Now, thinking forward beyond the core systems, there's governance that is also not happening within Ethereum. Ethereum seems to be explicitly having this fluffy consensus, right? But many other projects, token-based projects specifically, organize themselves in DAOs, right? And I found it interesting how 1inch is working on, DAOs interacting with, token staking systems. So is this something from the experiments that you're doing there that other DAOs can learn from that, or can they use what you're building? How would they engage or use the systems that you're working on?
So regarding the voting, we using Snapshot, nothing new here. But regarding the functionality, so as I said before, we have modular infrastructure where everyone can connect their own logic to the staking mechanism. So in this way, anyone can just write some piece of code with some logic. Maybe, for example, we decide to go with the graph to incentivize people who use, for example, to create and use 1inch the graph. We create a smart contract that has some data, and we deposit from both sides some 1inch and graph tokens. And for example, these graph tokens can be used to query this graph, and we distribute it linearly between stakers of 1inch. And this, a simple example from the scratch of the connected functionality. Yeah, we can extend the functionality like just connecting models, and I think this is the future of staking, where everyone can connect to the staking without the voting and ask anyone to connect this model to themselves and participate.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think that's something worth exploring. Now, let's round it off with a question of where are we headed? So, in the context of token staking, are we going to end up in a system where it's all, like we discussed before, going to collapse towards the core, right? So all of this stuff is going to end up inside Ethereum. Are we going to have an overlord that is going to manage it? I don't want to say an overlido, but something. Or are we going to have this wide variety of different tokens that do specific things going forward? Like, where are we going to end up?
I'm a big believer in many thousands, tens of thousands of chains. I think really it's the amount of value that these blockchains are coordinating and transmitting is what's going to dictate how many chains that we can support as an ecosystem at the end of the day. I'm including whether you're a layer 2 or a base layer, layer 1 here in terms of chains. And it's really going to dictate like the types of protocols, whether we're in the DePIN umbrella, right, for example, and there's a bunch of different people solving very different problems there that I think will enable some builder in the future to build another roll-up down the road that is a unique blockchain use case, for example. So there may be 5 to 10 settlement layers, but given kind of the modularity that we're going, the direction that we're going in, I think it's going to be pretty swappable in the future.
Yeah. So I think we'll see, value accrue to, a couple L2s and blockchains. We'll have to see how it plays out between the interoperability of the L2s. Things like IBC with app chains are sort of promising, but Ethereum has a lot of fragmented L2s, so we'll see how all the L2s communicate and the tokens that are associated with them. I do think we'll see a lot of tokens that are useful for different mechanisms and different protocols, not just L1s. And so I think we'll see a long tail of tokens, introduce staking, some application-specific stuff like blockchains or L2s, but then largely a lot of activity on the Ethereum L2s like Base or Arbitrum, Optimism, things like this. And we'll have to see how those tokens play out, because right now, Base Arb or Optimism is sort of just like a brand token, right? Where it doesn't really do much. It's sort of just affiliated with their brand, and that's why people assign value to it. But as time goes on, we'll see more revenue or links between protocol fees and revenue, and more use cases integrated to these tokens, hopefully. I think there's some regulatory work to do on that front, but very optimistic about the long tail of tokens and staking mechanisms which can be integrated with them.
I think tokens are a beautiful way to fund open source development, which was before a big problem, and I'm very passionate about open source. But it's not very clear in every instance how to fund, like my library that I work on the weekends on. It's not so clear right now, but I hope that we see much more innovation with tokens and different things with staking and slashing and blah and whatever and more stuff coming up. And then they also are more interoperable, that as a user maybe I don't know that like behind the scenes several tokens were now running around. But that needs time, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah, tokens, it's a good representation of a share, so you can just distribute them, and it has a value. It's a share. You can vote with this. You can participate in different functionalities. Like it's more about the inclusion the user inside the whole DeFi ecosystem with the right, with the choice to have votes with your share. And let's see what will be in the future, how the community will use this cool thing and build on top of the projects.
Well, I think with that I would like to thank the whole panel, and I would like to thank you for sharing stories from the trenches of how to build credibly neutral, empowering technology that is decentralized, privacy respecting, to support the individual. I think that's what we're doing here. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending here.
Thanks, everyone.